Once again, this is Nuance. I am Mike Scala. We'll be talking in a few minutes about the FBI seizing Mayor Adams' phone and what that might mean. But of course, I'm joined, as always, by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Oh man, just no, same old, same old. What it is, been working on creating some Notion templates and some other marketing materials.
Okay, hold that thought because I want to speak about marketing in a second. We, of course, joined as well by Sheba Abraham from the League of Women Voters, coming off a successful election night last week, right? What's going on, Sheba?
Yes, it was very, very successful. Yvonne Flowers, as you are aware, she did win the election. She garnered 68% of the vote, and that she is the first Black woman. She's not the first woman to be mayor in the city of Poughkeepsie, but she is the first Black woman to be mayor in the city of Poughkeepsie. So it's a very exciting time for Dutchess County.
Okay. History
And
being
thank
made.
you for coming on. She was excited when I told her, I said, there's 80,000 people that follow Nuance. And she's like, oh, wow.
Well, we actually just went beyond 90,000 views on the YouTube channel, right, Jay?
Wow.
90,000 views, yeah, on the various videos.
Wonderful.
We should get her on the show.
I will definitely ask her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. So she can,
before she gets too busy.
right. Yes.
We'll talk about the transition. Ask her how that's going, what her plans are for the city of Poughkeepsie.
Yeah,
right.
she's about to get real busy real fast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's funny, I went to a Nas show in Poughkeepsie a long time ago, the first time I saw him perform at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably 2002 or something like that. I was young, driving not too close to New York City. It's a bit of a ride.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's a very nice town. And if you decide to relocate, it'd be a nice town to relocate to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And weren't we in the newspaper over this?
Oh, yeah, we were.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I was at an event. I was at my cousin. We were celebrating my cousin's husband, his 85th birthday. And one of my cousins was there and said, do you know you're on the cover of the Poughkeepsie Journal? I said, no. And I'm holding the phone, and she's waving at you, both of you, and they took the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Oh, these are some of the voters." I forgot how he phrased it.
Supporter. It said she waved to a supporter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. She's waving at the supporters. So I was like, wow, that was nice. So we're all part of history.
There you go.
Yeah, that's funny.
That was cool. So we definitely got to get her on the show. But Jay, you mentioned marketing a while ago. I actually had a discussion earlier today with someone about marketing. In fact, I belong to a forum for lawyers and people give each other advice. Someone asked, what is the best way to go about starting a solo firm as an attorney? And so I gave some advice. I said, you want to find a way to be known in your community, however that looks. You want people to think of you when they think of a lawyer. Oh, I know a lawyer, right? And I said there are a few ways to do it. Of course, we kind of backed into it through politics. That was never our intention to help any law practice, but it did have that positive side effect because my name is out there in these areas and do get a lot of calls from people who need a lawyer. They say, oh, I know a lawyer, Mike's a lawyer, and they call me. But of course, there are other things that I've done. I have volunteered with different groups. I've provided some pro bono services. I helped establish and work with some nonprofits, and I've been in the paper many times. I've written articles in the paper. I said all of these things help get you known in an area. And when people are looking for a lawyer, looking for someone to hire, they're going to think of you. You're active in that community. You have a name there. Well, someone responded and said something like, respectfully, that is wrong and old school. Now the way to do it is with digital ads. You can get so much more bang for your buck, or so many more calls, something like that, off an ad than you can through in-person networking, as they put it. And so I said, listen, I'm just telling you what has worked for me. I said, I find that digital ads are a very oversaturated space, not denying their value or that they have a place. But for me, especially when dealing with the local community, where, take a place like Rockaway, where people read the local paper. And if something is happening in that area, it'll be in the paper, people will be talking about it, maybe the local Facebook groups, whatever. And then the whole community will come out and go to the event. If you're at the forefront of that issue, if you're on top of all these things, if you're in the paper talking about it, if you're the lawyer working on it, that's going to get you much more respect and visibility in that community than just putting an ad on Facebook. Because, who are you going to hire? Someone that you know, or you've heard of, or that you've seen around, that you respect, right? Or someone you've just seen randomly. And I'm not trying to downplay the value of advertising, but for me, there's more power in getting to know people and having people know you, however that looks, right? If you can be prominent, known, respected in your community, to me, that's worth a lot more than any advertising is. And it doesn't cost you any money. Now, it takes effort. And that's what the guy responded finally. He was like, fair enough. He said, it seems like you put your work in and you got known in your community, and that's great. That worked for you. He was like, but for a new lawyer starting out, you want to have that digital presence. And that kind of ended the conversation. So I wasn't sure if this person was trying to sell digital marketing. Maybe that's what his business was, that I was stepping on his business by saying it wasn't all that was cracked up to be, or if he was just kind of that newer school thought and didn't want to, or didn't want to think that that's the way to do it, that old school, putting the kind of, what do you call that, boots on the pavement type thing. Like maybe he didn't want to go through that, or didn't want to think that that's what you had to do still. I find that, honestly, with some people, maybe not this particular gentleman, but with some people, it's a matter of laziness, I think. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to grind it out. So now putting an ad on Facebook is easier, and they would rather convince themselves that's more effective than actually putting that time in. Not trying to say it has no place either, but I do think that it's more powerful to be known in an area than just to throw up ads online.
Right. And that was kind of a similar conversation that we had in doing campaigns as well. Is like a lot of times candidates will throw money at advertising, or throw money at people to do things instead of putting those boots on the ground. Right. Instead of being, in lieu of showing up at community events, in lieu of this. But yeah, I think, it could be that he was trying to sell a service. I do think there is benefit to that advertising, but the main point of advertising, one of the points of advertising, is visibility. And if you're in the community, then you're getting that visibility, and with the added bonus of actually being physically there, being physically able to talk with someone, that someone's actually seeing you in that space, instead of just seeing a picture of you online in, another 30 ads that they saw that day.
Right.
So there's definitely, for awareness, I think the ads are very good. Your name is out there, they see your face, and maybe it hits their mind some point. Oh, I've seen that face before. I've heard that name before, type of thing. But I don't think that is, I'm with you on that. I don't think that is a complete substitute for actually being out there, because not only does it get you visibility, which is what you want when you're trying to market, but also when you're out there and when you're doing things like you're doing, like writing articles, participating with community organizations, doing some pro bono work, what you're doing is you're providing value. Yeah. And so the public and the people that see you doing these things see you as someone that provides value. And that is going to be a lot more powerful, I think, than just seeing an ad that says, I'm Mike Scala, an attorney, I provide these services.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many people who can put ads on and do, right? But who are you going to trust? The person that you actually feel like you know, and like you said, have gotten some value from, or just some random name that you see? How do you even figure out which one to use? Go ahead, Sheba.
Yeah, but that's what made Yvonne's campaign so successful. She was always out there.
Yeah.
And people at every event that they had in Poughkeepsie, she was there.
Yeah. And you know what?
And
That's a good point,
Mhm.
Sheila. Go ahead.
No, and with talking to people,
Yeah.
taking, having time to, although she did have her digital, and she didn't have much digital platform that I saw. If she had that, that was because of the community or her, the people that were around her supporting her would put up a campaign ad, have the
Yeah.
digital format. But that was not what she did, and that's not how she won
Right.
her campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
Don't
glad
get
you
me
brought.
wrong. No, go ahead.
No, so I'm glad you brought that point up, Sheba, because we previously, a while back on here, had a discussion about candidates who think that they can win an election exclusively on social media. And that's a mistake. We've seen that these candidates lose time and time again if they don't have that presence in the community. And there are a number of reasons for that. I think last time we touched on the fact that many of the voters, especially in these primaries and especially in these local elections, skew older. And so they're less active on social media. They're the types, maybe they have a Facebook page with their 5 grandchildren on it, but they're probably not following the local politicians, right? Maybe they're following presidential candidates, but that's a maybe. But aside from that, even if people are following everyone on social media, and I've got 5,000 Facebook friends, many of whom are in the district, that certainly is a help. But you know what? Candidates now tend to be on social media, so it cancels out in a way. The real issue is, who are you going to vote for? Someone that you've only seen online, or someone that you feel like you know? And this is not running for president. This is not running for governor. If we're talking about a local race, city council, assembly, mayor of Poughkeepsie even, right? You have an opportunity as a candidate and as a campaign to touch a lot of the voters, to see them, to be in their face, right? To either call them or even go to their house, knock on their door, see them at an event, at a community event, whatever it is. And that is going to be a lot more powerful to a voter than just seeing you online, seeing your tweets, seeing your Facebook posts. Yes, do that. And there is value in that, right? But if you have an opportunity to actually physically contact, be face to face with most of the electorate, or a great portion of that electorate, that's going to get you a lot further than just doing the online stuff. Again, it's not like running for president. You're running for president, you're not going to be able to meet most of the voters in the country. But you're running for city council, you're running for mayor of Poughkeepsie, you do have a chance to meet a very large majority of them, or at least a big portion of that electorate. And why not take advantage of that? There's value in that. You're giving someone more value by actually going to their house. When I was at the polls on election day for the last campaign that we did, I remember a guy came up to vote, and of course I'm there at the polling site saying, "Hey, I'm Mike Scala, last minute campaigning." He said, "Mike, you came to my house twice," and he was excited to go vote. And I know he was going to go vote for me because he had that enthusiasm. He was happy, excited about the fact that I went to his house twice, and now he's going to show up, and he saw me at the polling site, and he's going to go there. He's going to see my name on the ballot, and it's going to be cool. Someone is much more likely to do that. I mean, think of it like this. Let's say it's a tiny electorate. Let's say there's only 10 people that can vote on this, right? One of the candidates is friends with the other 9. The other one is not. I think the candidate who's friends with everyone has a leg up already, right? Even if the people maybe even slightly disagree with that person over the other one, all things being close to equal, they're going to go with the friend. And so now make that a little bit bigger, right? Again, we're not talking about running for the world here. We're not talking about running in the whole US. In a relatively small district, in the grand scheme of things, you have an opportunity to make friends or get to know a lot of those people. And that's why you have to be out there in the community. And I think that applies not just in politics, but that applies in business and whatever you do, right? People like and gravitate towards people that they feel like they know and they've seen and they're around and they've touched. Even, by the way, we talk about these campaign mailers, and a lot of people write them off. Oh yeah, everyone throws those out. Well, hold on a second. You're sending them to people that you know are going to vote in this election. You're sending them when they're about to go vote. So the timing of it is important. And that is going to mean something. Just having something that they can hold in their hand has value. And that's something that's similar to what we talked about last week when we were talking about the CDs versus the digital, and how I think the way that the music industry has gone has kind of devalued music a little bit. That's one of the reasons why. When you take away that physical media, you are losing value. So you give someone to hold, an actual card with your picture on it and everything, believe it or not, you're giving them more value that way than by showing them a digital ad. Because the digital ad, they can click, they can, whatever. but now they got something in their hand. Yeah, a lot of people throw it out, but you know what? You're sending them to voters who are paying attention to this, and a lot of them are going to read it, and it's going to mean something. So being able to touch people physically, however that looks, means a lot more than just trying to hit them up online.
Right. And don't get me wrong, there is definitely a place for digital advertising. It can be very effective.
Yeah.
But you also want to be out there. You want to be a part of it, especially if it's a community that you're serving. And I guess they were talking about lawyers and whatnot. You know, they're going to be lawyer ads everywhere. If you can differentiate yourself from the other folks out there by being visible in the public, in the space, then you would think more likely you're going to be more successful or start to build a bigger network than if you were to do ads alone. And of course, those ads can be effective. Definitely. But they're just not, you know, you can do both, you know.
Right. And that's why I said to the guy, I said, you know, there's people in these areas who have gotten to know me. They're going to call me before they call a random person they see on a Facebook ad. You know, so you can put all the ads out you want. They're still going to call me first. Now, the ads can be useful in bolstering that. And there are people who do that successfully. I've done it myself. People get to know you organically, and then you can put an ad out to remind people, oh yeah, Mike, that's cool. I know that guy. You know, and then the people might be more likely to call you then. Like, let's say they're pushing a shopping cart in the store and they see your picture on it or whatever, and they're like, hey, I know that guy. You know, then it's like another touch point, right? But you don't want to rely on that, but that just kind of reinforces it.
Right. And you mentioned music earlier and how we talked about that with the CDs and stuff. This kind of reminds me of you remember Homeboy Sandman?
Yeah.
Another independent artist in New York, and he went to everybody's show. He even came to our album release party. He went to everybody's show in the scene. And then when it came time for him to do his album release party, that place was packed. It was a who's who of everybody in the scene because he had gone out, made the FaceTime, returning the love, being visible, and that. And by showing up to other people's places, he was providing that value as well of you know, a body in the space, an audience member, a supporter, and so it came back to him as well. So you know,
and they say like what 90% of life is showing up. That's really true, especially when it comes to networking and business. Just being there, that means a lot to people. KRS actually also had a line. This is real knowledge that's being dropped. He talked about when he came out with his first song, he shouted out the elders in hip hop, people who came before him. He shouted them out at the beginning of his first song, so that when the song came out, they all said, yo, your song is crazy, because he was shouting them out in the song. And that's how he was able to get the respect of his elders and the people who he wanted to be his peers. They were happy to embrace him because he started out by giving them the respect.
All right. Yeah. So, yep. Like I said, like we both said, you know, both can work, but you definitely want to be visible as well.
Right.
Participate in the community.
Again, I think people gravitate towards people they know. It's only natural. Now, there is a reverse effect of that I've noticed sometimes. This is a weird psychological thing where people think if they know you, especially if you're too accessible, I think, they think that if they know you, that sometimes that means you might not be as good as a person they don't know. But I think that's mostly people who have maybe low self-esteem. I don't know. But there are some people who have that kind of mentality like, well, if I know them, they can't be that great. You know?
Right. Yeah, that does happen for sure. For sure. So.
I remember one time, this is another story, I walked into a bank to open up a campaign account once, and the guy who was working the bank was giving me a lecture about how it's impossible to run for office. And he was like, oh, no, you can't do that. I was like, I want to open up a campaign account. And he knew nothing about my history, right? About the fact that I've previously been a Democratic nominee, let's say. He didn't know any of that. It was just like, oh, no, you can't do that. That's too hard. You have to know people. You have to know politicians. You have to have connects. You have to be doing it for a long time. He was assuming that I hadn't done any of that because I was there in his bank sitting in front of him. Maybe if I would have sent a staffer in or someone else, he wouldn't have had that reaction. I don't know. But it was just the fact that I was sitting there and I was, I guess, coming and presenting myself as a humble person saying, hey, I want to open up this campaign account. He was like, oh, no, that's too hard. You can't do that. You know,
shut up and open my account.
He just assumed that because I was sitting in front of him, I wasn't good enough or qualified enough to actually get elected.
Right. Yeah. So,
You know, but we
Speaking
also
of,
mentioned this a long time ago on the show.
oh,
This is such thing as being overexposed. I think we've mentioned that in a few different contexts, even in music, right? But certainly in politics and business and anything. You don't want to be overexposed because it's about supply and demand in life, right? And you know, you want to have value. You want to have, we talked about ways to give value. You want to keep that value. And I think you can lose it if people have the perception that there's too much of you to go around, if that makes sense. Right. Like if
right. And
every single room is like, oh, him again. You want to kind of turn heads when you walk in. Oh, look who's here. Not, oh, them again. You know?
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
balance that has to be struck,
Yeah.
and it depends on how you're going about it. Will Smith talked about that in that transition period when he first started to join social media, because he came into social media late to the game because there was this older thinking in Hollywood, that you didn't want to be too overexposed. You didn't want people into your life so much. You wanted to create and maintain a mystique
Right.
about
Right.
you
Intrigue.
as a celebrity. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you know, opening up to social media, there's some of that taken away. But you know, he went and changed that ideology to show that he could go and do creativity versus all up in your life type of thing.
Right. Right.
And try to navigate that road. But that was a large part of you know, even in celebrity ideology, like, you know, create a mystique. You know, you want, like you said, when you show up, people to turn heads, like, oh my God, he's here. Like Eminem doesn't really do interviews.
Yeah.
So if he shows up somewhere, it's like, oh my God, like what?
Right. And if he does an interview, it's gonna get a ton of views because like he's doing an interview. I gotta see what he's got to say now, right?
Right.
And that's, you know, I think that makes sense to people. If you did a
Balance.
million, yeah, if you did a million interviews, people are probably not going to be as interested in them because it's like, oh, we've seen this over and over again, right? So you do keep that value up.
Right. But we are also in a new space where the social media and sometimes, oftentimes people, especially on the younger side, expect
Yeah.
to hear from people that they're following, or, you know, maybe even brands, expect some sort of content. And so not doing that can also have a reverse effect. So it depends on how you navigate it, how you do it. You know?
Yeah. But I think there's an opportunity there. You're right. There is an expectation that you have that content, but you can have the knowledge that, yeah, if you can keep people intrigued and be a little bit mysterious, that does generate more interest in you. And I think you can use that to your benefit because everyone else is not operating with that knowledge or they're disregarding it. And I think they're undervaluing themselves, right? And so this goes back to that discussion of quality versus quantity. Yeah, now in today's world, it seems like everyone demands more quantity, but if you can keep up, you know, in a respectable way, but provide better quality than everyone else, then I think you're really setting yourself apart.
Right.
So there it is.
It's like Bane. You know, you heard of Bane? He's this famous graffiti artist, and he every time he would show up and he would do something with graffiti somewhere. It was like, oh my God, Bane, yes.
You mean Banksy?
Yeah, Banksy. I'm calling him Bane. Banksy. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I think they're still trying to figure out who he is.
Yeah, he's this famous graffiti artist. Yeah. Have you heard of him?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So he's like that. When he shows up, it's like, oh my God, oh, look who did this. He's over, you know, he did something here. I was like, oh, okay.
Right. You know, and also in that vein, when it comes to business, some people, I think, try to have the cheapest prices to attract more customers, and there are different strategies there, obviously. But if you know that you're bringing and providing value, I think it's better to make people pay for that, and you're providing a better service, and so the prices should reflect that, because people always think that they get what they pay for. And so if your prices are too cheap, they're going to think that the work isn't as good. But if you know your work is good, give it the value it deserves, because I've always been told also that you'd rather be the lawyer who comes at a premium than the cheapest lawyer in town. So
yeah, true.
Maybe we should do some coaching.
We should do that. We should set up a program, do an online course or something like that.
Yeah, we'll give a TED talk.
Yeah. So we might need to do some coaching to Mayor Adams.
Maybe. So that story was kind of crazy to me when I heard about potential collusion with the Turkish government. That wasn't what I
Right.
guessed, right?
Yeah, that would oh, I got the hiccups now all of a sudden. Yeah, that's crazy that, and it just came out of nowhere that suddenly the FBI rushes in and seizes his phone and his iPad for this investigation. And wasn't he at an event when they did this, or they go into his office?
No, I think he was leaving an event, something like that.
So
But
they
did
wanted.
they give the phones back? Did they give it back to him?
Yeah, they did.
No.
But
I'm sure they copied everything.
yeah, right. They can give it back, but still take the data of what's on it.
Right. So this is part of an investigation into political fundraising during his 2021 campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was leaving a public event in Manhattan, and they came up to him after the event and yeah, jacked him for his stuff.
Right. Now he said that he reported someone on his team because when he was asked about this, he had said, "Oh, I've been the one saying everyone needs to follow the law. I'm not worried that they're going to indict me." And he was saying that he was the one who blew the whistle, so to speak, on someone on his team that they were potentially breaking the law. I don't know if that was this particular incident or something else, but I know he's saying that as kind of a talking point to say, listen, I'm the one who's cooperating. I'm Mr. Law Enforcement here. I'm the one telling my people that they better keep in line with the law. I'm not doing anything wrong.
Right. And he's been kind of deflecting on some questions regarding this. And to some degree, you expect it because it's an ongoing investigation. I don't think the investigating team is giving a lot of details either. But it is very surprising. I mean, if it did happen that there was some sort of collusion with the Turkish government, for what end? I think it said something regarding business favor or that type of thing.
Right.
It would be very disheartening if that was something that was taking place.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Now, part of this allegedly, or I guess potentially, right, because there's an investigation to see whether it's happening, but
Right.
they're talking about this notion. I believe it was CNN that reported this. There's a possibility that some straw donors were used, right? Which is something that happens pretty often in New York City. It is illegal, right? But it does happen. And there have been arrests in the past over it, some high profile ones, in fact, because you have the matching fund system in New York City.
And what does that mean? You're talking about straw donors.
Right. So in New York City and other places as well, but in New York, where this is happening, there is a matching fund system where the city will match with public dollars contributions that are made. But there's a limit as to how much each person can give and how much the city will match per person, right? So sometimes people try to get around this illegally by having one person, let's say who's wealthy, give a lot of money, but because you get more matching dollars when it comes from a lot of people, they'll say, don't put it down as me giving you all this money, which is often illegal also because it usually limits how much you can give. But to get the matching funds, especially what they'll say is, have it come in from all these other people and then we'll reimburse you. Right. So that's illegal because it's a way to get around the campaign finance law. The whole point of the matching fund system, if you participate in it, is to say, I'm going to be funded by small dollar donors and a lot of them. So I'm going to show that I've got the people supporting me. So I'm not going to be relying on millionaires and billionaires to fund my campaign. I'm going to get a lot of the local residents to give money, and then they'll be matched by the city, sometimes 8-1, as is in New York City. That's a program which it's supposed to make it easier for people to run for office because you don't have to know a lot of billionaires and be wealthy yourself to do it. So this is a way to try to skirt that by getting all those matching dollars from one wealthy person who's going to reimburse everyone. So if you're coming in with 100, let's say, donors and you're claiming matching funds and all of them, those 100 donors weren't really giving you their money to support your campaign. It just came from that one person. And
Right.
to get around it and break the law. So,
and that matching funds is an 8x match
in New York
so
City, 8-1. So
it can be pretty significant.
Right. So if you just think about that numerically, I guess if one person were to give you $1,000, that's $1,000. Now, if you were to claim matching on that, 175 is the limit. So you can get matching 8-1 on the first 175, right? But that's also if they meet certain criteria. They've got to be a New York City resident. So if this is someone from the Turkish government, let's say, maybe they wouldn't even meet that criteria. Maybe they would if they were living in New York. But let's because I think that was part of it also, that there were some people, businessmen, and some people who are involved. They were Turkish, but they were still living in New York, and I think New Yorkers or whatever. So it depends on who the person is. But let's say that $1,000. Let's say the person is a New York City resident, and the first 175 of that is matchable 8-1. So you would take that 8 times 175. That comes from the city plus the $1,000 contribution, right? But if you were to do it illegally, as it might have been going on here, they could say, instead of that $1,000 coming from the one person, we're going to give it to 100 different people. So that's $10 per person. But each of those $10 now you times by 8. And so you get that 8x factor on the whole $1,000 as opposed to on just the 175. And so obviously it's more money for the campaign, but again, it's illegal. The question though is, to what extent, if any, did the Adams campaign or Mayor Adams himself participate in this, right?
Right.
It's possible, and this happens too. Sometimes the campaign doesn't know, because you're getting these contributions coming in, you're getting these checks, you're getting these credit card transactions, whatever it is, and you're saying thank you for your contribution, but you don't necessarily know where it's coming from. You just see the person giving you the money. But if someone is reimbursing them, well, they might not tell you that they're doing that, right?
Right.
Then they're the ones breaking the law. You're not breaking the law if you don't know about it. Of course, if you know about it, you have a duty to not accept that money, not claim that for matching. But that's perhaps part of this investigation, right? To see if they colluded with the Turkish government and the folks who are here, or if maybe this was just done on their own as a way of them trying to bolster the campaign, because maybe they've got business interests and they thought that if they supported this candidate, and I don't know if they were doing it to other candidates or what have you, but maybe they thought that would put them in that person's good graces if they were to win, right?
Well, this is also, which probably doesn't look as good for his campaign, is that this is not the first time, right? So over the summer, Manhattan prosecutors had brought charges against 6 people who sought to manipulate fundraising programs to get tens of thousands of dollars. And that was also for his 2021 campaign. Adams hasn't been charged in that case, but now we're looking at this here. It seems could be someone there was doing something that they shouldn't have been doing all around.
Well, Sheba, do you remember in 2013, we were hosting some of the mayoral candidates when they came to Queens, right? John Liu was one of the candidates. In fact, I interviewed John Liu at that time. I was the moderator for that Q&A with him. We did one with Bill de Blasio, we did one with Bill Thompson and others. But John Liu, I believe, was precluded from receiving matching funds when he was running for mayor because of the straw donor scandal that went on dating back to when he was the comptroller of New York City, right? And I believe someone on his team even went to prison for that. I know he wasn't charged, but I believe someone actually had to do time over that because there was an investigation into his fundraising, and it seemed like that was happening there too. You know, again, if someone on the campaign is involved in it, then they're breaking the law, but you don't necessarily know where it originated.
In this instance, can Mayor Adams be charged, or how is it? How this could work against him?
Yeah, well, but that's what you have to see, right? And I guess that's what the investigation is looking into, whether he was involved in such a scheme.
Right. Yeah.
So it happened behind the candidate's back. They might not know.
Right. Just like
the Turkish, he went there several times. Did he make trips? I think I heard where they said he had made trips.
That I don't know.
Is it the Turkish government? I think I heard that, or somewhere, because I think they said he had made 8 trips, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong.
Since he's been mayor, he made 8 trips to Turkey? I don't think so.
6. He made 6 trips prior to. The investigation is going back to 2000. What year is it, the investigation going back to?
I don't know. From what I've read, they haven't given a lot of details or even exactly what they're investigating. It's just what it's related to.
Right,
They
because
haven't given specifics on it, all that.
but I think when he was
Brooklyn Borough President, I'm seeing here in the CNN article as well, this might be what you're referring to, Sheba, the FBI is also looking into whether he used his influence as Brooklyn Borough President in 2020,
right.
so prior to him being elected mayor, to get the New York City Fire Department to waive safety requirements so a temporary certificate of occupancy would be issued to newly constructed Turkish mission to the United Nations. So
Right.
it seems like that is part of this, right? On the one hand, you've got this potential straw donor scheme, and on the other hand, it does look like he has been doing things to help.
Right.
And so they're looking to see if there's that connection there.
Right. He apparently did go to, at least one of his trips was he did go to Turkey in 2015. And it looks like the consulate paid for it.
Yeah, because they said he took 6 trips. I know they, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like he might have helped to get the Turkish a Turkish consulate or embassy open as well. But I mean, that could be just part of his regular duties. But
right.
You know,
and also, let's be fair, right? Let's call it what it is. It's possible that he received sizable campaign contributions from Turkish people, maybe government officials, but maybe just businessmen. As part of this article too, it talked about a businessman who might have been involved in the scheme. But what if it's not an illegal scheme? What if it's a businessman who gave a lot of campaign contributions to him and convinced him to help his cause? You might say that that's corrupt, maybe, but that's not illegal necessarily, right? That's kind of just what a politician is.
That's another way of looking at it. Yeah, that's another way of looking at it.
It would be suspicious, and it would be something that you want to be wary of if someone at the mayor level especially could be influenced by a businessman like that. You know what I mean? If this is something that happened. And
then there's a thin line also between helping someone that you want to help and being bribed, right? Because that's
right.
It looks like it looks fishy, right? Someone comes in and gives you a lot of money. Next thing you know, you're helping them open up a mission in New York, or whatever. It's like, well, wait a minute. And of course he can come back and argue that he would have done that anyway. He could argue he didn't know that gentleman before, and since meeting the gentleman, he learned about all the great issues he's working on, and he wants to help him. So it's always that fine line as to, were you influenced by that money that you were given, or are you doing that because you think it's the right thing to do and you just happen to know this person now?
Right.
Because you have to keep in mind, in government, you are often approached with all kinds of ideas from all kinds of people, right? So it's not as though every idea, everything that you're doing comes from you. You're serving the people. So you're out there as a public official, people are coming to you and saying, I want this bill written. I want you to come in and help me with this. I want you to do this. And so it's natural for someone to approach someone like that and say, I've got a business, I've got this, I want you to help me with this, right? It's also natural for people to give you money, especially if they're a supporter of yours. They're going to give you campaign contributions. But you got to see where that line is. Obviously you can't be doing it in exchange. You can't be, I'm going to take money in exchange for doing this for you. That's when it crosses the line. But you have to see if that line was crossed or not. I guess in this case, it seems like there's a lot of smoke, right? So they're going to see if there was a fire.
Because to be fair, that it could happen a couple of different ways, right? If there is direct collusion and someone's like, okay, I'm going to donate this to your campaign if you do this for me. Or it could be that they want to donate to the campaign in hopes that the person will recognize that you supported and that they'll give you some attention. So which wouldn't be a direct thing. It would be more like, oh, well, I'm going to at least show that I'm down with the team, so to speak. So we don't know which way it went, and that's what the investigation is going to find out. If there's any wrongdoing.
Absolutely. And it could be innocent too. It could be you're doing something you think is the right thing to do, and you're helping people, right? You're helping people in a district or in a borough or wherever. And then the people are appreciative of what you did, and they want to support your campaign now. And so they're giving you money. Now they're raising money for you. But then someone from the outside might look at that, but wait a minute, isn't that suspicious? He just doing great work to help this community, and they gave him money. What is that about? But maybe they're doing it because they want to see you get reelected because they know that you're good for their community, which is how politics is supposed to work. Right. So it's hard sometimes from the outside to figure out if it's corrupt or if there's anything illegal happening without really digging into it.
Right. And so this is what we're going to assume is what this FBI investigation is going to be looking into, and I'm sure they'll be quite thorough. It'll probably be uncomfortably thorough, because the FBI, you don't think they'll be involved and do a shoddy job, you would expect.
No, but how long will it go on, this investigation? How long can it go on?
Yes, it can go on for a while.
Yeah, as long as they
normally, here's the thing. I think this is why it's really raising eyebrows. This is the mayor of New York City. And normally the FBI would not come in and do something like that unless they thought that there was something real happening. They thought it was really serious, right? This is not something you do on a whim. The FBI is not going to come in and really take anyone's phone for no reason, but they're not going to do it certainly to the mayor of New York City without thinking there's something of substance for them to pursue.
Right. And the previous investigation that I mentioned earlier was the Manhattan, investigators doing it. But this is federal. So like you said, there has to be something here that provoked them to get involved. And it could be, the foreign involvement of a foreign government. So,
yeah. Well, they also went to apparently the home of one of his top fundraisers and seized their electronics as well.
Right. So
they really there've been warrants, this is the real deal as far as the investigation goes. Doesn't mean that there will be an indictment or that they'll find reason to indict, but there's at least reason to look into it to this degree.
Right. So I think this could lead us to the poll question for the week.
Yes, because many people online on social media are talking about the mayor having to resign. Of course, he's not saying he's going to do that at this point, but there are people, and they have their own agendas maybe, but you see it out there. So we want to see what people think about this, because you will often hear that when elected officials under the heat of an investigation like this, even if they aren't indicted or convicted, they say that prevents them from doing their job effectively. So the poll question of the week is, do you believe Mayor Adams should resign over the FBI investigation concerning the potential collusion with the Turkish government for illegal campaign contributions?
Yeah. We've kind of been here in this question with other people, when investigations start, it's like, should they resign? Even if there's nothing's happened. And we've seen people that just immediately resign, and others who don't. Personally, I would think, it's just the investigation right now. I don't think he should resign.
One thing,
especially if there's no wrongdoing, if he hasn't done any wrongdoing, but if it's just the investigation right now, let some things play out.
Well, he said he won't get in the way of the investigation. I did see that.
Right.
So I thought that was, a positive response on his on his side. So he's, and in other words, like you said, what you're saying, we'll let the investigation happen and see what comes out of it.
Right.
It's all all of us can do.
Right. Yeah. So.
But I have a question. If I just like a person and I just want to donate to their campaign, and say, for instance, after they win, we all go out and we have a good time, and I decide I want to open up a business in your town or city, how does that look? Would that look suspicious?
Depends on the details of that. I don't think that automatically looks suspicious. You're saying just to open up a business in an area
the person.
I don't think that's bad.
Not automatically.
Not automatically. No.
But could it look suspicious?
This sounds personal, Shiva. What's going on here?
I just thought I'd throw the question out there. Is it,
Well, you know what? It starts to look suspicious when that politician starts doing things for you.
Right.
Like?
For example, if your business is in a place that it's not originally zoned for, and all of a sudden it's now able to be zoned for that area.
Right.
Then you start to question, well, that person was just partying with the politician. Maybe they helped him out.
Well, especially, and this is where it really starts to cross the line, especially if that zoning change wouldn't usually happen that way or shouldn't happen, right? Sometimes there's a cover up. We've seen this in a recent indictment. Sometimes the politician is saying, like, I want you to turn the other cheek. They're calling the authorities and they're saying, I know you're going to come investigate this. Normally you would look this over and maybe come to this result, but I'm asking you to do me this favor and, come to a different conclusion. Help them get this passed. And then you look into it and you find out that the person that they're trying to do this favor for was someone who's giving them money. Then you start looking into that, gets suspicious, right? And then you want to know, well, was that a bribe? What's going on there?
So, but automatically, I don't think.
Yeah, it's not automatically suspicious if it's done, I think, under the normal course of business, right? People open up businesses all the time. You have real estate people come in and they need zoning changes. That happens all the time. And yes, you are going to find those real estate developers often give campaign contributions to the elected officials. We know what that is about. We know what they're hoping to gain from that. And yeah, that does look a little sleazy, but that's not necessarily illegal, right? It becomes illegal when there's that favor for a favor, when it's bribery, essentially.
Yeah. I don't like that grin on your face. It sounds like there's more to the story. We'll keep that on mind, whatever.
I just thought,
everything.
Yeah, well, as a public official too, that's one way of looking at it. As a public official, you should be doing what you believe is the right thing to do.
Right.
Separate any campaign contributions or people that you know from the equation, right? You're there to do what's right for the public, not to do favors for your friends or help people with campaign money. That's not how it's supposed to work.
And be aware how certain things look and can come off, so that you do things above board, so that you don't fall into this trap of bad optics or suspicion. Right? Make sure that what you do is above board, and you can combat some of these type of suspicions.
Yeah, we saw that with the de Blasio administration. I'm sure they'll do similar studies of the Adams administration, but they were looking at all of the people who gave his campaign money and noting that the donors to his campaign were much more likely to get meetings with the mayor than people who were not donors, right? And of course, that's the kind of thing that raises eyebrows.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it should.
Yeah. So do you think Mayor Adams might have done that along the line? Someone got a favor, or because
we don't know.
Do you think
that'd be speculation? That would just be speculation. I'd say just let the investigation play out.
So speaking of polls, we'll see what the people say. And we had a poll from last week to go over, right?
We sure did. Our poll from last week was, do you vote in every election, even if it's an off year? So last week, of course, was election day when we had the show. And we got a pretty sizable number of votes here. And the result is 99% say yes, they vote in every election, even if it's an off year.
99%. Wow.
99% said yes, they vote, even if it's an off year.
Well, clearly, this is not representative of the general voting electorate, because we know that the turnout is not 99%. I wish it was.
No. And actually, this year, there was a significant drop-off in New York's elections. And so that was kind of the backdrop from asking this question. Actually, when I put it online, because New York has noticed that there were some issues. But yeah, 99%. So we got a lot of comments on this, and people giving a little bit of their voting history. One person said they've been doing it since 1973, every year. Another one since 1970. So we got some people that are skewed older. Some people were saying that they do, but it can be a little difficult. They're saying that the City Board of Elections, the City Board of Elections makes it easy to vote, but sometimes it can be difficult. Some people talking about they do it by absentee. This person was from Connecticut, saying that they're trying to get it pushed even more so there, but the GOP is fighting that. Which I think we've seen that across the board, across the country, where the GOP is trying to fight the absentee ballot. voting. You know, and because it would allow more people to be able to vote, because sometimes people can't vote because of, you know, whatever their situation is. Access, getting to the place, maybe the poll lines are too long, they don't have the time to wait there, they don't have the place nearby, and so this types of thing can help more people vote. So 99% here saying. One guy, I don't know how true this one is, but one person said they normally never miss, even in the off years, but this year they couldn't get there in time because they went to a Chinese takeout restaurant, and they got there, they couldn't find the order, and so they ended up, the place gave their order to someone else, so they had to wait to get a new order done, and by the time all of the stuff got figured out, they had missed the time to make it to the polls.
Sounds like an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I'm just saying that food had to have been really good, or you had to be hungry. But yeah, but other than that, yeah, everyone seems to be on board.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. The people that are looking at the stuff are more likely to vote, right? Because they probably wouldn't be paying attention to what we're doing if they don't vote.
Right. And so this is also on a site that's where I ran this poll primarily, was a site that caters in a lot of political news. So people here would be more politically motivated and politically minded. So, you know, still, even amongst that type of group, 99% is incredibly high.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, don't see if we got any views on or responses. I don't think we got any responses on YouTube through the poll.
All right.
So,
well, before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about what I saw of the latest Republican debate. I don't know if you guys caught it at all.
I did not.
No, I didn't either.
Okay. I've kind of
tuned out.
Yeah. So Pence dropped out and the field narrowed. I think he only had 5
candidates. Wait, who dropped out?
Pence.
Oh, Pence dropped. And what's his name? What's his name? Dropped out too.
Dropped out, but
Tim Scott,
the Ninja Turtle guy.
Tim Scott.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, but that was after the debate, right? I believe he was there, if I'm not mistaken. But I think there were 5 people on the stage. And of course, Nikki Haley, now one of the front runners, she says something that all Republicans, well, I guess most Republicans tend to say when they're running for office, that they're offered states' rights, right? We've got to be careful with this concept because we know the Civil War was fought over states' rights, but really it wasn't. That was what they were saying at the time. The Southerners were saying it's not about slavery, it's just about our rights to do what we want to do. It was really about slavery, right? And so anytime you hear states' rights, I think people kind of raise an eyebrow at that. The Republicans now love talking about states' rights, but she didn't even really cast it in terms of the rights of the states. She was saying when it came to abortion that she was fine with it as long as it was legalized by the people. Now, when she said the people, she meant in the states. And we saw, for example, last week, Ohio voted to legalize it. Oftentimes, it's not done by the people as a ballot question. Oftentimes, when done by the states, it's done through the legislature. And these are politicians passing it. But what you hear from Republicans like Nikki Haley is, we don't want these things, not just abortion, but any hot issue. Oftentimes what they'll say is, we don't want those politicians in the federal government doing it. We want the people in the states to do it. And they make it sound like that's so much more righteous, that's so much more virtuous. Right. People, it's not the politicians doing it, it's the people. But the people in these state legislatures are politicians. And that's something that I think may be lost on some people, because I know most people watching a presidential debate are in tune with presidential politics. Maybe they watch cable news to see what's going on in Congress. Maybe they see what's going on with the Supreme Court. I don't think most people out there are really paying attention and really know much about state legislatures. And so it's easy to kind of sell this story to them that it's not, don't worry about if it's done by the state, because it isn't those evil politicians doing it that you see on TV. It's the people doing it. It makes it sound like they're just, PTA moms, soccer dads, or everyday people, but they're completely ignoring the fact that these are politicians. And in some states, like New York, California, big states with lots of population, you're going to find probably more people in these small state districts than you might find in a federal congressional district in one of the smaller states. And so they're running for office the same way a congressperson is running for office, and they've got to get the campaign donations. Same thing we just talked about potential bribery schemes and straw donors. That all applies to these local seats as well. You know, it's a serious thing. You got to get endorsements. There's always political forces on you. It's not just some quaint little thing holding up a sign, vote for me, and I'm going to go to the state capitol and vote on abortion. No, these are actual politicians. These same politicians often then run for Congress, and then you see them in the federal government. It's the same people. So there's this conflation that always happens, and it annoys me when I see Republicans do it, or anyone do it, but the Republicans love to do it, where they say, we're fine with it as long as the people chose that. But we don't want those politicians to do it. We want the people to do it. They're all politicians.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, people should definitely be aware of that. And it's kind of a smoke and mirrors type of situation in that regard. You know, this has been the GOP's, that's their main point always. One, I don't say main, but that's one of their main points, is that they want to champion this so-called states' rights. But yeah, it comes from that same old ideology, but you got to be careful around that. Still politicians. I mean, we're just talking about a local politician, Mayor Adams, under these, you know, these investigations, whether true or not, still under these investigations. It still happens at local levels as well.
Yeah, and even for city council, you know, some people don't understand the size and the scope of New York City Council, for example. And if I go state, you know, I was in Miami last year talking to someone, and I think they were from somewhere else, maybe in the Midwest somewhere, and they were asking about what it's like to run for New York City Council. They weren't picturing it as big as it is, even an election for city council. They were thinking of it as like, you know, running for school board or something like very, very, very hyper local, where you don't have to raise a lot of money. You don't need a staff. You just kind of go and walk up and down the street saying, I hope you'll vote for me. And I was explaining, you have to compare it to a congressional race in most of the country in terms of size and scope. There are so many people who get involved, so many groups that want to give you questionnaires and meet with you and have an endorsement process. And then you get the little counties, the party organizations get involved, the unions get involved. You have to raise a lot of money. You have to hire a lot of people. It's a big operation. And, you know, it is like running for Congress. It's a big deal. But a lot of people don't see that because, as we've discussed, when you turn on the TV, that's never covered. Local politics is never covered. And there are reasons for that. You know, these cable channels are watched by everyone, so they want to be more universal. But even on our local news, sometimes we hear stories about what's going on in the New York City Council, but usually they keep it at a higher level also. In our schools, they don't teach us enough about local government. So people don't really know about that. You know, they think it's all very, very, very small potatoes. So it's easy to sell that to the people that are watching on TV. You know, oh, it's just the people doing it. Like, no, this is real politics. You know?
It really is.
Absolutely. Well, I think we are coming up to the end here. So I think we could use a bottom line. So the question is it going to be Mike? Is it going to be Sheba? Are we going to rock, paper, scissors for the bottom?
Rock, paper, scissors.
So, Mike, would you like to give the bottom line this time?
Well, let's see. What did we talk about? We talked about the mayor's investigation.
Talked about voting. Talked about Nikki Haley. We talked about showing up and being visible, providing value to the community.
Right. So that's a good bottom line, right? Provide that value and keep that value. So if the mayor allows something like this to derail him, right, that will obviously be a negative on his value. It will hinder his ability to serve the people. And that's why you do see sometimes calls for people to resign, even if there hasn't been a conviction yet, let's say, because they think that there's too much pressure on them and they're devalued. We live in a world where, unfortunately, the headline becomes the reality in most people's minds. And especially in something like politics, perception becomes reality because it's about how people receive you. And you will lose your value if you allow something like that to take you off your game. And so I would say do all you can to maintain your value and do the right thing. Part of keeping your value is being trusted that you will serve the public, or perhaps it's a business, perhaps it's your customers, perhaps, you know, whatever it is. Keep your value, be mindful of the fact that integrity matters and perception matters, and serve the people with honor.
Sounds like a good bottom line to me.
Yes,
People can find us on YouTube and Instagram at Nuance Show. And then, of course, on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you can get podcasts. Look up Nuance and give us a follow. Get everything pushed right to your device when it goes up. All right. Jump in the comments. Leave some comments. Hate is fine, too. We're good with that. Anything. Just participate. Get engaged.
Yes.
All right.
And as always, we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time.